All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of Moonhawk Studios Presents Fragments of Silicon Edition. I'll say that for a little while until we get everything straight. And boy, if I had a month. But before we get into that, with me in the studio, as always, is my good friend Adam.
Yeah, everyone's had a month this month.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin's in the hizzy.
Probably the most stable of the people here, I'm assuming. Surprisingly enough.
Petty fan on the keystrokes.
I make things go beep and boop.
And we have the Galax here.
Recovering from psychic damage.
I think I've taken all of the status ailments, but we'll get into that in a minute. Of course, I'm Mac Paladin, and we purportedly have a great show for you tonight. And Adam, why don't you start us with the news?
Well, I myself am stable. It's more people around me who are unstable. Yeah.
Iffy.
Yeah. Well, on that note, my brother's divorce is finally finalized as of today.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right.
It's only went smoother than expected, but that's out of the way, so new phases can begin. Let's see, upgraded my Disney Plus account to have Hulu inserted into it. That's a thing you can do starting from today. So, that's my news for the week.
Mine.
Kevin.
Sorry, mine is pretty straightforward and basic as normal. Just weekends at the AMC, and really nothing much going on around here. Thankfully, relatively speaking. So, Petty Fan, you're up next.
Oh, good lord. Where to freaking begin? Thursday night, my mom's cat somehow broke the window in our basement laundry room to the outside.
Boy.
We don't know if she saw one of these stray cats in the neighborhood or her reflection and tackled the window and broke it. But yeah, that was a fun Friday morning where me and my dad had to fix a window, replace a window, and found out some of the parts of the frame are rotten. So after Dad gets a job, we're going to need to do more repairs. But right now, we just don't have the money to replace a window frame in full. But hopefully between the spackling and we currently have some baskets and various laundry things in front of the window where light can still get in, but the cat can't get to it even if the other cat walks by, she can't try and attack the window. So hopefully it can hold long enough. And then we learned earlier in the month that my grandmother went into hospice because she has stomach cancer, and she basically was losing the battle. She was at the point where she could not really eat and drink. And then yesterday we received word that she died at the age of 85. I'm honestly not really too distraught on this, though, just because she's not really been a part of my life since I was 16, when she basically disowned me because I informed her I had no desire to be part of religion or anything like that. So I guess I'm happy she's no longer suffering from cancer anymore, but that's really all I can muster on the subject. You know? And then, yesterday, just before we got news of Grandma dying, I believe it is called a terminal block on our oven burned out.
Oh dear.
Yeah, for the people call it different things in different parts of the country. Some people call it a range, stovetop burner. It's that in there. Is the terminal block that blew, and basically, if I wasn't there, our house probably would have burned down. And today I ordered the parts to fix it, because we do not have the money for a new stove right now. Luckily, it's a relatively easy repair, because the stove is, it's a white Westinghouse, and they haven't made stoves since the mid-'80s, so... Yeah, it's about time for the factory original parts to begin their death.
Westinghouse is actually the parent company of General Electric.
Fair, but they haven't.
No, they're rival.
But they haven't had their name on like appliances in forever. But yeah, the parts to fix that are on the way. We have like 2 burners coming, the replacement junction box, and we found one of the drip pans rusted completely through. So that's yeah. So yeah, that's hopefully that's gonna be an easy fix. That stuff should be here Tuesday. And yeah, I'm just I guess in lighter news. The game shop I frequent, while the store is closing, they will still exist online. So it was good that they're at least able to, still exist and theoretically could come back to a physical store at some point in the future. Like they didn't lose the IP or whatever, their existence in going bankrupt. And like Adam did mention in Fragments, I'm going to, if I see the owner this weekend, I'm going to talk to him about if they're looking at any recourse on the whole basically being defrauded situation. Because, yeah, that was messed up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think that's it from me. Just... Can the month end already, please?
All right.
Just as a citation needed moment here, Westinghouse has an extensive line of products that are quite modern.
Huh.
And they sell TVs, the smart TVs that are sold at Walmart, and they have generators, solar lights. Yeah, they're the parent company of General Electric.
Huh. I just haven't seen like white Westinghouse stoves around here locally. That just might just be a local thing then.
I don't think they're the parent company of General Electric, but they do have an electric corporation that is the Westinghouse.
Oh, that's right.
Back
That's
to the 1880s.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
GE was absorbed in the whole NBC Comcast thing.
Right, and Westinghouse, if you recall, actually was
CBS.
CBS, yes.
Yes. Okay, so now we've got the citation needed and the community notes.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think people will probably hear that and go, "Gee, what?" Anyway,
Galix, I'm sorry, your turn.
We had an ice storm over the weekend, and we lost power early Saturday evening and got power back late Monday morning and got internet back late Tuesday morning. So I have not had a good few days. And we just earlier today had a literally during Fragments, we had a brief power flickered because it's still frickin' raining. So yeah, that was very trying. On the Sunday, first off, because I couldn't play the game for review and couldn't be there for the review, and also we couldn't do Pathfinder because like my entire town is out, and the guy who hosts the game is in town. So he was out. Apparently, he actually had like a branch fall on his generator, so he had to get a new generator. So that's no fun. Because ice storms suck when you're in a heavily treed area, but I'll still take it, I guess.
I would love to live in a rural area where I could have a diesel generator and say fuck off to my neighbors.
Well, our generator isn't everything, but it keeps everything in the refrigerator from going to bad. We can have lights on, we can cook, and we can run the washing machine. We can't run the dryer. I can't use my desktop. Obviously, we didn't have internet anyway. So yeah, it's not everything, but it keeps her. So on Sunday, I was having a really bad day, so I ended up going over to a friend's house for a while who was doing okay and had had internet and power and was able to finish up my playing in the Splatoon Splatfest there. Because part of the reason I was frustrated is because I had stopped very shortly before getting to the highest participation point in that. And if I hadn't been able to go somewhere, I wouldn't have been able to complete it. And then after that, I kept my sanity for another couple of evenings, assembling a high-grade Gespenst from Super Robot Wars, of which I have posted pictures in the Discord. I actually just finished that earlier this evening, but so that was something. But yeah, it's been a stressful few days. On the plus side, I got to decide what to do for lunch at work today for office lunch. So we got food from a Chinese place I know somewhat. And I think
Anything
that's all I
else?
got. I think that's all I got.
Okay. No, Mac, it's your go.
So in the ongoing saga of things falling apart, we all know the status of the water main. That has been resolved. But I'm sitting here in the dark. Well, not the dark. I was able to find a Spark Trail 750 lumen lantern on clearance for $15, and I do have a pristine candle that I've lit for the first time because I didn't have a lighter. And yeah, so I'm getting a lot of feedback there.
I mean,
It's coming from
From
you.
yeah, the Discord was doing something.
Okay.
How about now?
I think yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. It's still kind of picking me up.
Mac, I think some of it's coming from you.
I mean, you're not exactly broadcasting in pristine condition, let's say.
Yeah, your audio quality is terrible, so I'm not surprised if your phone is just picking up some of its own output.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially since you're probably using two phones or whatever.
Let's try that again. How about now?
Better.
There you go.
It's much better there.
Always got to do that log out and log back then thing with Discord, but it was definitely I was hearing myself coming through Adam's speakers.
Weird.
Anyway. Also, I just put something in the private business. Adam, if you could quietly respond to that, because I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, so ongoing saga. So yeah, my net bill automatically came out of my bank account, which, great. So I at least have phone because it's linked. But I'm sitting here. I picked up a couple of $1.99 solar lights that are hanging on the window shade, and I've got a candle, and I've got my Ozark Trail butane grill and all that stuff because I've been without power now since Thursday. So I have no computers, no internet, no hard lighting. And well, I mean, I have internet via the phone, but yeah, does it really count? I guess. But here we are in in glorious 5G. And it's all because of my delightful ex-roommates helping me run up the power bill all last summer. And I couldn't pay the bills because I was struggling with a few things. So I accept no small measure of the responsibility for this. And I knew this was coming, and I couldn't do anything about it. So, but yeah, we had like $3,000 left over from last summer. From June to October, I wasn't able to pay the electric bill. I was struggling to get everything else squared because of all the chaos that continually happens in this household. And I've been finally getting things squared away. Like starting in January, I started a sort of mental program to try to get things going, and the water main broke in my apartment, which required some small level of presence and supervision on my part because of my cats. Because the workers tended to be a little careless. They took the screen out of my bedroom window, opened the window, and were throwing concrete and trash out the window into my backyard. During which time, if my cats had been loose in the apartment, they would have toddled over to that window, jumped up on the windowsill, and absconded into the ether. In fact, Doodles has done it twice now. And she's 12. And I don't like her getting out because she's 12 and she's been a house cat her whole life. Apparently, I left the back door. I let her get out while I was puttering in the backyard a couple of days ago. And I had come home to throw down a quick snack and go back out to work. And in that time, I fed the outdoor cats, and apparently Doodles ran out when I didn't see her and was outside for 6 hours by herself. Now, luckily, I like this word. I had absconded with a little cat hideaway, a little outdoor cat hideaway that one of my former neighbors had left behind a couple of years ago in the abandoned apartment next door. And I finally dragged that over to my backyard, and Doodles went immediately inside there and hunkered down for the entire night until I came home. And then I was frantically calling for her, and Tippy was freaked out. And I thought, okay, either the water main broke again or Doodles is missing. Because she did not greet me at the door. And so I'm frantically calling for her because she does this thing where when she gets spooked, she won't come when I call her. Well, I do it for 5 straight minutes.
Yeah, my mom's cat
at increasing intensity. Yeah, at increasing intensity. And then she finally shows up. Well, this time she didn't show up, and Tippy was running back and forth like he knew I was calling for Doodles and she was not here. Like I was reading Tippy's his meekering and his body language, and I was like, and I said, Tippy, Doodles is missing, and he howled at me when I said that. So I finally opened the back door and I yelled her name, and she gave me her crappy kitty signal. It's the crappy kitty signal, and she goes, this is how she responds when she's agitated. like that. You've probably heard it on stream. She doesn't meow in a melodic way because she's. We call her the primordial croaker because she has feral cat DNA from before they were attempting to be aesthetically pleasing to humans, so we would feed them. Dates back to prehistoric times when cats really didn't communicate with each other verbally. They do that primarily for our benefit. So Doodle howled the fucking Star-Spangled Banner at me. All 3 verses, including the racist ones. And then she came inside the house and promptly parked herself in front of the people because she was cold to Kitty. It was 38 degrees last night. So Tippy was inside, freaking the fuck out and howling the whole time. Don't pee on my jacket, or so help me God, I will kill you. Speaking of Tippy, yeah, you treacherous. Yes, you wonderful little boy there. Yes. Okay, let me take that jacket and move it out from under you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I know you're freaked out. It's okay. You don't understand where this alien light is coming from. But yeah, so yeah, it has been a clusterfuck, and I have probably about $1,200 between eBay and Temu. I have about $1,200 worth of solar equipment bookmarked because I am not going to be running up electric bills like that again. I'm talking generators, solar panels, the works.
I mean, if it helps you feel better, you don't have to deal with certain roommates anymore. So that'll help.
Yeah, I no longer know what to think of that because the more I think about it, the more it reminds me of something else that I will tell you guys after the show.
All right.
And that's that.
Hey.
Other than that, I have just come off of a 5-day stretch of 8 to 16-hour days trying to catch up, but also still having to pay for other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea when TEP is going to turn the power back on. So even when I clear the $1,200 plus the reconnect fee, I still have left. It was $2,000, so I had paid off $1,000 of the payment arrangement and got down to $2,000, and then 2 checks bounced while I wasn't paying attention because of this water pipe fiasco.
Mm.
And so now it's like I have no idea. It could be like that time back in 2006, and Adam will remember this fondly, when I was sitting there by candlelight playing Game Boy Advance SP.
Mm-hmm.
Because I forgot to switch over my power when I transferred apartments, and TEP unceremoniously cut me off and did not re-engage for 3 weeks.
Fun. I use fun with all of the air quotes.
Believe me, I heard them.
They were made physically manifest.
Yes. So that's my ongoing saga of trial and error. Now, as I've said a number of times on my personal Discord server and to a lot of other people, once this is clear, the existential threat debts are done. All I have to do is pay rent, my car, my insurance, and the regular electric bill and internet.
It's been a long saga.
Yeah. And I'm so past angry about everything right now that I'm calm. Scratch that. I do have a certain manic episode going on right now where I'm digging up my entire backyard. But that's a story for another time.
I was about to say, you looking for Jimmy Hoffa, or?
Wait, you know what? I found an entire second patio buried 2 inches under the third.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So I'm turning it into a barbecue area. I'm going to get little little trim bricks to put around it. And then I'm going to level off the lawn. I'm going to plant all new grass. I'm going to put marigolds, fruits and vegetables in the garden above. I'm going to. The former roommates left behind one of those ginormous gazebo umbrellas. I'm going to get a new table and chairs.
And I'm going to be drinking fucking Mai Tais.
You think I'm fucking around?
Oh no,
That's exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to invite my folks over for a barbecue and family dinner like we haven't had since I was 17. So going on 30 years.
Oh man,
it's going to be great. And I'm actually happy that I have that little butane grill now because or butane stove, because I actually prefer cooking with gas. As does my mom. So now I just have to get adapters for the little cylinders for all the, because I've got a ton of barbecue equipment. You have no idea. Anyway, I'm going to cut that short so that way I don't run out my phone before we get a chance to actually talk to our guest. Our guest tonight, if they are still here, is Vera Wylde of Council of Geeks. Vera, are you still with us?
I am. It's rapidly approaching my bedtime, but yes, I'm here.
Oh, we're sorry. What time do you have a hard cutoff here?
I don't have a hard cutoff. I'm just over 40 with a kid. I don't stay up this late.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I'm 47 and I've been wrangling cats, so believe me, the fatigue. If I didn't work overnights, I would totally understand that fatigue. So tell us a little bit about Council of Geeks and what you guys do.
Well, despite the name, it's worth clarifying Council of Geeks is just me. I'm trying to think of the shortest. I'm trying to think of the shortest possible version of this. Council of Geeks is a YouTube channel that I have been running now for 12 years. It started out initially as a series of scripted shorts with me and some of my friends. And then between quote unquote seasons of that, because that took forever to do and they still weren't very good because I didn't know what I was doing, I started doing what I thought of as like these solo rambles at the camera, just talking about whatever geeky nonsense was on my mind. And that actually started getting a better response and also was a lot easier to make. So it basically transitioned to me rambling and doing reviews of geeky media, rankings, etc., etc., etc. I tried to keep the meaning of Council of Geeks going for a little bit. I used to have some friends on who would come on intermittently, but then they both had kids and trying to schedule it was a nightmare. So it's been pretty much just me, aside from Joel, my thumbnail guy, who came in 2018 and said, "Hey, I really like your stuff, but your thumbnails suck. Would you pay me to start doing them for you?" And I've been paying him ever since. He's fantastic. So like that, and at this point, I also talk fairly regularly about LGBTQIA plus related issues. I came out as gender fluid on the Council of Geeks channel in 2018. That despite the fact that I have a separate channel that's even older called Vera Wylde, which initially was cross-dressing advice because foolishly I thought I was a cisgendered male cross-dresser for an embarrassingly long time before I figured my nonsense out. But that channel is also still going. It just has absolutely no upload schedule and is much less safe for work at this point. But yes, For my stuff, if you look for Council of Geeks on most platforms, you will find my geeky stuff. If you look for Vera Wylde on most platforms, you will find the spicy stuff.
Okay. All right. As is our standard format, I'm going to turn you over to Adam so he can ask you the directed questions, and I will offer color commentary as I think of it. So, Adam, take it away.
All right. I suppose my first question is to make sure of things, because if someone would look at your YouTube channel and they were new to it, well, they would be seeing quite a lot of Doctor Who content. But you're not a Doctor Who focused channel, are you?
I mean, I don't know if I would still be considered a WhoTube channel. I mean, it depends on how strict you want to be with it. I've never been a dedicated Doctor Who channel, which some channels are.
Right.
But like, it is the thing that I have always talked the most about and still do. It's the only thing, because at this point I have this is my living at this point. This is my entire my entire work week is doing this now. So I have a secondary channel where almost all of my review content goes at this point, because that was getting lower views. The only reviews that still go up on the main channel are reviews of new Doctor Who stuff. So that is still, while I wouldn't call it the primary focus of the channel, it's what gets talked about the most.
That makes sense. Like, in terms of traffic and the algorithm and all that noise, like, and you've been covering Doctor Who for 12 years then.
More or less. First video I ever did on Doctor Who was just a ranking of the doctors at the time. I started doing reviews of new episodes with the Day of the Doctor special. I'd been watching it well before that, but that's when I started doing reviews of it. And yeah, I've been doing reviews and following news and doing sometimes video essay related stuff connected to it. Slowly working my way through classic era Doctor Who. There's a lot, so that's an ongoing.
That's putting it mildly. Don't even get me started on the 67 missing episodes.
Well, quite a few of them have animated recreations at this point. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them. So it's not quite as barren as once it was.
Right. Yeah. Doctor Who fans are an obsessive sort in a good way, because that's how we have those recreations, because they just recorded the audio.
Yep. Like, it's for anyone who doesn't know, the BBC back in the day, they and like Doctor Who is not the only show this happened to, but it's kind of the only one that has stood the test of time, so it's the one that people care about now. But the BBC made the determination that the reusing the tape was a better use of money than archiving it and buying new tape. So they just erased old episodes so they could reuse the tape.
Because magnetic tape isn't free, I can't say it isn't cheap, but it isn't free.
Well, in the 60s, it was actually rather expensive. I do want to make that clear.
They were actually using digital tape back in the 60s, which only networks have the kind of money and clout to do that kind of thing. But that's
okay, fair.
Supermarket Streak was another one of those types of shows where the master tapes were all erased.
Yeah. And it's also important to note that unlike a lot of British television, Doctor Who, actually, especially Classic Who, has a lot of it. Like, serials would be 7, 9 parts, something like that. So that's why there's so many missing episodes.
Yeah, I'd say roundabout Oh God, I'm trying to think how much I should backfill on this. Okay, so people who don't know, just on the off chance, Doctor Who started in 1963. We are now on the oh God, I don't know how many actors. We're technically on the 15th incarnation of the Doctor. How many actors have played it is even more than that for weird reasons. But the character has a built-in thing. It's a sci-fi show where usually he, sometimes she, maybe eventually they, who knows, regenerates, and like that's the justification for the new actor, who also has the freedom to perform it slightly differently. So all the Doctors have their own kind of little personalities. But anyway, I'd say around the third Doctor's era, they kind of solidified for 4 episodes being the standard length, and these were about 22, 24-minute episodes, although they could go as long as 10 parts sometimes for these serialized stories. Yeah, there's a lot of it. Like the only classic Doctor who I've seen everything from so far is the 6th Doctor, and that's because he has the least stuff, because they canned him after 2 seasons. But I'll get through the rest. I'm not doing it chronologically. Good grief, no. My ADHD will not stand for it. I'm jumping all over the place. And you can, because while the individual stories are serialized, every story is very episodic. You don't need to have seen an earlier one.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, it's all wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff anyway, so.
Well, that too.
I mean,
so
that's how
watching it out of order, maybe in sequence anyway.
Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent. Like, there are instances where Doctor Who has like an entire season-long running story. Like, God, what was it? The Key of Time?
Yeah, the Key to Time, like that. I put a massive pulsing asterisk next to that one, because, like, I would call that a framing device at best. Because
fair.
All of those stories still ultimately are very self-contained, with a tiny bit at the front and a tiny bit at the back, like, oh, we found the latest key to time. But you could remove that element and change literally nothing about the actual stories being told. I would say the first time they actually tried to do something meaningfully serialized was the Trial of a Time Lord.
Right, the Valeyard and so on and so forth.
Yep, which was almost good.
Right. It's been a while since I saw that. Like, anyway.
It has some of the best parts that Colin Baker got to do on the show. As a whole, it still doesn't really come together for the most part. Colin Baker really got the short shrift on that whole thing. Thankfully, the folks over at Big Finish, which does audio adventures, they gave him a whole second crack at it, and he's had fantastic stories written for him over there. So that, for that reason, despite his TV run being pretty bad, I actually did a video fairly recently talking about why it doesn't work. He is far from my least favorite Doctor at this point, because his audio adventures are so good. Oh, and if you think I haven't seen all of Classic, I have definitely not listened to all of Big Finish audio. There are not enough hours in the world.
Again, yeah, Doctor Who is quite the all-encompassing franchise. Like, I suppose that does beg the question of who are your favorite and least favorite Doctors?
My favorite Doctor is Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. So that's from the modern era. I adore his run, and I do take it as a complete experience, because like he's the one who I would say changes the most over his time as the Doctor, and I actually have really come to appreciate that incarnation's journey. For least favorite, it kind of waffles between the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison, who I just have such a hard time connecting with. I know other people who like him, and they've even told me why, and I'm like, okay, I get that, but it's just, it doesn't click. Either that or, and I feel bad with this one, but the War Doctor, who was played by John Hurt, just because, like, he really only had the one appearance. I mean, technically he had 2 or 2.5, depending on how you want to count it. But he really only had one appearance on the show. And like, he was good, but he really should have been the primary focus of that special, and he wasn't. And then I tried listening to some of the War Doctor stuff on audio, and it was some of the less interesting stuff I'd heard from Big Finish, despite the fact that he was he performed it well. But I think in his case, it was more a case of the stories weren't doing him justice, whereas Davison, I can't seem to quite connect with. But yeah, those two are usually hovering around the bottom for me personally.
Fair enough. I mean, it is your own list.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, everyone's going to have their favorite Doctor. Everyone's going to have their least favorite Doctor. There is no objective answer to either one. All answers are fine.
Right. And, there are different reasons why one Doctor or another might have suffered. As you mentioned with the Sixth Doctor.
Oh, there was so much nonsense going on
Yes.
behind the scenes at that time, including higher ups at the BBC actively wanting the show gone. Yeah. So
that's a legendary tale.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they were pushing Coronation Street over the Doctor Who at that point.
I mean,
or am I thinking?
Ouch.
No. Coronation Street is ITV. You're probably thinking EastEnders.
Yeah, there we go. Like,
Yeah,
I knew it was.
I know my British television actually deeper than most. But yeah, Coronation Street is ITV. EastEnders is BBC.
Yeah.
Still ouch.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's still a soap.
Yep.
Big oof.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess at least it wasn't Neighbours. I know that's Australian, but still.
Yeah, it's Australian British, but yeah.
Anyway, getting back on track here. So, what other geeky endeavors do you review? Like on your secondary channel?
Well, and I talk about some of this stuff on the primary channel too, but like in terms of stuff that I review, I still cover most of the Marvel stuff. I will cover some Star Wars, increasingly little of it, just for various reasons. I have seen every Star Wars movie. The shows, The Mandalorian's fine. It's just after the first season, I'm like, I don't need more of this. And I've tried to watch other stuff, and so much of it is tying it into the Clone Wars cartoon, which I never got around to seeing. So I'm like, I'm sure this is great and meaningful for people who know what the hell they're on about. I don't. And tried to watch
the
that's
Tarkovsky one, your Clone Wars
Yeah.
one, right?
No, I'm talking about the CGI one. The Tartakovsky one, that one, not only do I know, I have the DVD sets for. That one I know.
Yeah, she's talking
Yeah.
about the David Filoni one.
Oh,
There we go.
that one
That's
I
the guy.
missed entirely, and from what I've heard from some of it, it's not that great.
It
Yeah,
depends on
I
who you
heard the
ask.
start wasn't great, but it got good.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Star Wars fans who will swear by that thing these days. The CGI movie that was the kickoff was not good, and I've heard the first season is rough, but a lot of fans at this point will swear by that thing. I never got around to it, but it leaves me feeling very
complicated. Clone Wars is complicated because it in essence, it is the final legacy of George Lucas, and Dave Filoni was his acolyte, who ultimately took over everything animation-wise, and continues to this day. Which is why I had a massive debate with some dude that I ended up blocking over Ahsoka, because I'm like, what you fail to understand. And he said, I don't know who this Dave Filoni guy you're putting all of your faith into is. And I was like, bitch, hold up a minute.
Well,
And I was like, first of all, yeah. But short version is this. It's like Ahsoka is season 5 of Rebels.
yeah. I mean,
So if you
Ahsoka
have
has
a-
Gundam unicorn levels of continuity applied to it.
I hate
I understood that
phrase.
Am I wrong?
I didn't say you were, but also fuck you.
But
I understood that reference.
Anyway.
Sort of coming back to the actual question, yeah, like I'd say Marvel's probably the thing that I talk about the second most, although I'm starting to lose enthusiasm for that now as well because they've over-egged that pudding a bit. But I've allowed myself to drop off from being too much of a completionist about anything other than Doctor Who, and I at this point, like, I haven't been to the movie theater since August because, like, I just don't feel the need to jump on a lot of this stuff anymore. I'm getting too old for this shit.
I mean,
I have a question.
haven't
I do have a question. I have a question related to the theater thing. Friend or foe of Ghostbusters Afterlife?
I enjoyed it.
Go see Frozen Empire. Then.
I don't want to. See, here's the thing you have to understand, and people, I seem to regularly lose people in trying to explain this. I can enjoy a hit of nostalgia, but I only want it once. Ghostbusters Afterlife was a hit of nostalgia that I wanted after not liking not only Ghostbusters 2016, not because they were women, but because it just was middling, and really not liking Ghostbusters 2. I think that was probably the first movie I disliked as a child. And Ghostbusters Afterlife gave me a hit of nostalgia I was happy to have. What I then wanted to happen was something that would go, okay, we've got your interest back. Now here we head off into some new stuff now that we've got your attention, as opposed to going, okay, let's bring back even more crap that is just nostalgia bait. And the first trailers for Frozen Empire, I'm like, there is so much nostalgia bait in this trailer that even if it turns out it's not as high a percentage of the movie as it is the trailer, that's what they're selling it on, and I don't want it right now. I will wait for streaming.
All I will say is that Phoebe Spengler is the heart and soul of the film. That and her relationship with Carrie. Other than that, the nostalgia bit, they said going into it that what you really want to take away from what they're trying to do with it is that they were trying to make it more of the real Ghostbusters style adventure, which I was kind of sold on. See, because if you listen to the producers instead of the dipshits at Sony Advertising who made the trailers for it, the trailers made it seem like it was all about the original characters. Aside from Rey, they're barely in it.
The trailers also made it seem like it was a very serious film, and it's actually not the case.
But also not.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a lot more comedic than the trailers intended to be. Is what I'm trying to get at here. So,
well, that's not a good sale for me either, because again, I adore Ghostbusters, but I have a very strange relationship with it versus everybody else. It used to confuse the crap out of me, and I've come to terms with it, but I still disagree. It used to confuse the crap out of me hearing like Ghostbusters on a list of like greatest comedies, because I fell in love with that movie when I was like 4 years old. And you know what? I didn't get 75% of the jokes. I didn't know the movie was a comedy. I knew
Lady Ghost in his dream.
I knew there were bits that were funny, that even as a kid, I'm like, okay, haha, that's funny. He slimed me. That's funny. If you're 4 or 5, that's funny because goo. But like, I didn't get most of the jokes. So for me, Ghostbusters is a supernatural adventure with some genuinely scary bits and some humor in it. So when it's classified as a comedy first, I'm like, oh. Like, that was ultimately the overriding problem with the 2016 one, is they just went in like, let's be all jokey and let's let the actor, well, Paul Feig also does the same thing. Judd Apatow.
Let's make it an all-female. Let's make it an all-female caricature of the original.
No, it's not even that. It's really not. What it was is Paul Feig approached it the same way fucking Judd Apatow approaches things, which is let's get a bunch of comedic actors together, let them riff every goddamn scene, and then we'll try and sew something together like it's an actual movie, and it's not.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, even the original actors who appeared in the movie were like, we have no idea what the fuck is going on here.
Anyway,
they were all lost. The best part of the whole movie was Kate McKinnon.
I disagree.
Oh,
She was too forcibly quirky for me. I actually thought Leslie Jones was the best part of that movie. But I also think Winston is the best Ghostbuster, and she was serving a similar function of being the grounded one who actually has their head on halfway straight.
I can see that. In the immortal words of Senior Kim, I'll allow it.
Well, I mean, like, if you can't tell from how long I can string together a sentence and an opinion, and how worked up I get, I've been talking into a camera about my opinions for over a decade. It happens very naturally at this point.
Right. Well, I have nothing more to say about Ghostbusters at this point. I mean, I have a lot to say about Ghostbusters at this point, but I'm going to let it sit and let Adam resume the put this train back on the track.
Well, I mean, and the next track is perhaps more contentious than what we've been talking about.
Oh boy.
Well, I mean, I don't think we can avoid talking about it. But, you know, you did mention that you do cover politics on your channel, and not just any sort of politics, but you do delve into politics and entertainment. And unfortunately, we have to bring up her again. Like, you know, like your latest video is all about J.K. Rowling. Yeah.
I would love nothing more so much as to never, ever have to talk about her ever again. But, like, the degree to which I talk about politics, like, it'll come up on live streams because people will ask. But otherwise, I pretty much restrict it largely to LGBTQIA+, either representation or media, and or things connected to that. Her, unfortunately, like, there are some things I've had to talk about or I felt obligated to talk about because it's like, I've talked about this before and now I have to follow up on it. She very much falls under that. I started talking about that aspect of her initially way back in 2019 when the first really huge alarm bells were getting rung because I was a fan of Harry Potter and I had like done reviews of all the movies and I'd done some other Harry Potter related stuff on the channel. And so I talked about it at that point because it was connected to stuff I talked about already. And then as everything has gotten worse, I've had to keep talking about it. And it had been almost a year since the last time I talked about her. Because at this point, like, if she's just doing what she's been doing, like, I can't. I'm not gonna. But then she does something that's worse. And it's like, oh, shit. Okay.
You're not wrong. You know, it's just I wish I think everyone who, you know, isn't politically aligned with her at this point just wishes she would go away and never ever speak again.
I'm sure a bunch of people who aren't politically aligned with her but have a financial interest, who are politically aligned with her but have a financial interest in Harry Potter would wish she would be quiet too.
Probably. It's just. I mean, what else can you say?
At this point, nothing. I've said it repeatedly in videos of upwards of 40 minutes long. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm done.
Understandable. Anyway, shifting to much more pleasant things, I suppose. I.e., going back to Doctor Who here. Did you enjoy the recent Disney Plus specials?
I enjoyed the. I took enjoyment from all four. I enjoyed the ones with Tennant more than I enjoyed the Christmas special. I'm not going to read too much into that because I tend to not like the Christmas specials as much as a lot of other people do, anyways. Just the level of fluffiness they tend to be is not really what I'm here for Doctor Who to take in. And it was a huge shock to me that I enjoyed the Tennant episodes as much as I did, because I had been on record long before that casting was announced what a horrifyingly bad idea it would be to ever bring back a previous Doctor and have him play the part again. Not like as the same incarnation, but like to have the Doctor regenerate into an old actor who played the part. And actually, to be clear, I still think that's a bad idea in the abstract, but they managed to tell stories that were better for the fact that they did that, and they were stories that I actually really liked. So
I guess it does kind of retroactively explain what was going on with some of the joking cameos from previous Doctor actors and various other things where it's like, is it or is it? You never know.
I mean,
it's like confirming that yes, he can go back if he wants to.
I would consider that confirmed from Day of the Doctor, though. Like, everyone who's like, oh, it just hints, like, what the fuck else does that scene with Tom Baker mean, if not that? Like, I don't know. I've been nervous about the possibility of it happening, honestly, since that scene with Tom Baker, which is a scene I love, but I'm like, oh, crap. They've opened up the possibility now. And I ended up liking the end result, which is like, that's how I try and keep things. I can go into something, and I'm happy for myself for this fact. I can go into something that I do not think will work, but that does not preclude me from enjoying it. I actually adore watching something that I think is a bad idea and shouldn't work, and it ends up being good. I love that. That's one of my favorite things, because I can be a cynical person in terms of my expectations, and I love to be wrong about that.
And I suppose I also have to ask about the recent writing announcements that have been made.
I'm assuming you're referring to Moffat coming back to write an episode. Not thrilled about that. And that has nothing to do with Moffat as a writer. He has written multiple of my favorite episodes of the modern era of Doctor Who. He was the showrunner for my favorite Doctor, which was Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. He was showrunner for my favorite series of the modern era, which was Series 10. But it's not that I have a problem in the abstract with Moffat coming back to write an episode. What I don't like is the pattern that it is a part of, which is that we have to backtrack slightly here. The current showrunner is Russell T. Davies, who is the guy who was also running when the show was revived in 2005. He ran it from 2005 until Moffat took it over, with Matt Smith coming in as the 11th Doctor. And when RTD was announced to come back, I was hopeful that he wouldn't just try and recreate what he had done during his initial run. And while, at least with the specials, the Tennant specials at least, he didn't really do that, I am increasingly disheartened by how many elements of the old show he's just bringing back. And it makes it harder for me to be excited for what he's going to do, because I'm like, this is all the stuff you did before. We're bringing back the exact same producing partners he worked with before. We are bringing back Murray Gold to do the music again. And as much as I like a lot of Murray Gold's tracks, I'm kind of over his bombast. I was really settling in to Sigun Akinola's more ambient energy. I was enjoying that. I was ready for more of that. That's gone now, and we're reintroducing the goddamn mystery box storytelling, which RTD was not the only one who did it, but he did it every single series, and I'm really sick of that as a storytelling metric. And now we're bringing back a writer who also wrote episodes under RTD before. I'm like, is any of this other than Ncuti Gatwa himself? And I am enjoying him. His energy is great, and enthusiasm for his performance specifically is carrying me right now. But other than him, is any of this new? I don't know.
I mean, I definitely feel that. Like, there definitely feels like a lot of glory days being hit here, which is concerning. But I suppose we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, again, I thought the tenant specials were going to be just a hey, do you remember when it was like this before the whole way down? And the only one that was slightly like that was the Star Beast, which was the first one. The next two very much were not. And I ended up really enjoying them. So like I want to be wrong. I have a lot of fears that I can't shake, but I want them to be proven wrong very, very much.
Well, I mean, we don't have long to wait.
Nope. Month and a half or so.
Yeah, it's closer than I keep thinking it is. Right. Anyway, so shifting back to Marvel, I suppose. Have you had the chance to watch any of X-Men '97 yet?
I haven't. No, I might try and find the time because I've heard enough good things about it. Except that, and this is going to get tomatoes thrown at me in the streets. I don't think that highly of the '90s animated X-Men cartoon.
There's a definite argument for that. I mean, especially depending on the aspect you want to focus on, because there's no getting around the fact that the X-Men animated series from the '90s was done on the cheap.
Yeah, and like the thing is, even at the time, I didn't like it all that much because, granted, it wasn't the fault of this production, but it was coming out at the same time as Batman the Animated Series and Gargoyles, and you could tell they were not spending the same kind of money on this. So it doesn't look great. I've always felt that the voice acting was a pretty mixed bag. And it's one of those cases where, like, I'll give it credit for successfully adapting a lot of the comic book stories, but as someone who was familiar at the time with a lot of the stories they were adapting, it meant I was getting nothing out of it. Like, yes, I know this story. You have told it to me again. Okay. And like, I get that it got a lot of people into X-Men. I think that for people who were not already reading the comics, it probably had the most value. But for me, who that was the brief period in which I was reading the comics, yeah, I'm watching this going, I know these stories already, and you're doing nothing else with them.
Particularly for people who aren't that in the comics, it's arguably the smoothest and most consistent version of a lot of classic X-Men story arcs.
Oh, probably.
To a point. Yeah, to a point, because they still had to do some adaptational changes, like either, everything to do with Shadowcat comes to mind, or like there was one comic arc that they were doing that they just hadn't finished yet. It was actually still ongoing in the comics, so
it doesn't cover everything in the comics, but it goes through most of the story arcs with a more consistent cast of characters and a more consistent writing style and less interruptions from other parts of the Marvel multiverse.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's like amazing and perfect because of this. It's just like if you read through this, you can get a pretty good. If you watch this, you can get a sort of solid idea of at least a certain generation of the X-Men, give or take a few characters being changed, without having to get into classic archive comic diving, which is an increasingly arduous task.
And
I appreciate all that, and I get why other people get a lot out of it. I never really did, and for that reason, X-Men '97 wasn't really that heavily on my radar. Enough people are singing his praises that I might at least give it a shot. Doesn't mean I'll actually review it, because like something that happens intermittently at this point is that there will be things that I either don't bother watching, or if I do, I don't review. Not because I have a strong opinion on them, but actually the opposite. So, like, there's a number of things that I've seen. I'm like, I thought this was fine. I have no strong opinions on it, but people who love it really love it, and they're going to be mad at me for not loving it, and I don't care about it enough to put up with the annoyance of that.
fair enough stance to take. Like, you know, if you're not too invested in something, then, you know, why go out of your way to watch it?
Yeah,
You know,
like it's the fundamental reason why I didn't keep watching The Mandalorian past the first season, and there have been other things like that where I'm like, I'm not saying it's bad, but it just isn't doing much for me, so I have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
which is a bit of a problem when you are making a living doing reviews among other adjacent things.
Well, I mean, it helps that the reviews go up on the second channel and make me less money anyway, so that really is kind of what I can bang out in my spare time, whereas the main channel is the stuff I actually have to put effort into.
Right. I suppose on that front, what do you have upcoming for your channel?
Whoa. Well, I will be reviewing the new Doctor Who episodes. Probably have the reviews out a couple of days after they air, because I want to try and have my weekends be my weekends. I in terms of my work schedule, I am fond of saying I'm self-employed and my boss is an asshole. But those will be happening as those new episodes start to come out. In the more immediate, I'll actually have a video going up on Saturday, which is after the J.K. Rowling one. It's just a fun one where I pitch ideas for 5 different Star Wars shows that would actually get me interested in watching Star Wars shows again. And it's all just meant to be fun. Next month, I will have a video up that is actually an extended interview with a storyboard artist who worked on Has Been Hotel. That's a whole thing. That video's over an hour. That took me a while to get put together, but I'm excited. I'm excited for that one. Other than that, that's about all I'm going to share. Just because the docket of my upcoming works is a Patreon perk, so I'm not gonna spill all that.
Right. So I think I've run through my gamut of questions. Does anyone else have anything further?
No, I think we're good.
I think I've piped up as necessary.
I'm good.
You're all sick of me. I get it. I get it.
Actually, I enjoyed the banter, but I'm exhausted from all the work I've been doing lately. So I'm not the spring chicken I once was when I started this podcast 15 years ago.
Also, it's late over. It's late over here too. That's 12:30. It's after midnight. So yeah.
No, I was enjoying the banter. We could probably talk about it, shows and stuff for ad infinitum. It's just I have limited battery power in my phone right now. We killed 20% so far.
I might be able to have you back on at some point, though, because I did enjoy this discussion.
We did. Yeah, we definitely need to do that. I will conclude with this, Vera. What do you have any appearances, big or small, other shows that you want to promote that you may be on talking about your program?
Okay, let's go through the stuff. So the short version, as I said at the front, is Council of Geeks for the geeky stuff, Vera Wylde for the spicy stuff. But you will find content on YouTube, on TikTok. I stream on Twitch Wednesdays and Fridays under Council of Geeks. I am part of a D&D campaign that has been going for a while called Quill and Sword. That's on Partridge Quill on Twitch. That's every 2 weeks. Next episode of that is tomorrow. I have a podcast that I do with Jesse Gender called on the Council of Geeks podcast feed, and it is called Jumpgate. We are going through every episode of Babylon 5, which she has watched and I hadn't before. So we're working our way through that. That's out every Monday. I have books. I have multiple self-published books. I have a autobiographical self-advice kind of book called Skirting Gender. I have a 2-act play called When She Wakes. That one is for 18 and older. And I have a fantasy novel called Dreams of Fire that is published with Nathaniel Wayne listed as the author. It's okay to call me that. It's not a dead name. It's just my legal name. I consolidated everything under Vera. I'm gender fluid. Don't worry about it. I think that's most of what is out there. Well, I mean, you hunt for Vera Wylde on stuff like OnlyFans or ManyVids. You'll find that too, if that's your bag.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a lot of stuff to consider, and we'll definitely, like I said, we need to have you back on the show so we could cover anything we might have missed and so on and so forth. So.
There was something that I missed. If anyone is in the area of Essex, Vermont on Saturday, I will be performing at the Essex Pride Show for a Trans Day of Visibility. I am also a burlesque performer under the name Vera Wylde as well. Just got reminded of that.
Perfect. See, that's what I was kind of looking for, was like upcoming appearances, interviews, et cetera, et cetera. So. Perfect. That's good. I'm glad we got that in there. Well, Vera, it's been awesome talking to you, and like I said, I think we should do this again sometime in the foreseeable future. But I really enjoyed talking with you and debating geek culture, and especially listening to you talk about that.
Yeah, it's something we do here quite often.
Yes, and especially your insights into Doctor Who and so on and so forth, because that's something that I really don't know the status of our Whovians here. I know Adam is into it, but I don't know much about Kevin's interest and so on and so forth.
I'm not a super fan per se, but I am because of my father and because of my I guess it's safe to say lover, boyfriend, if you will. Because of them both, I'm very much of an advanced knowledge.
Okay, so enough to be dangerous.
Likewise, secondhand, but with significant research on various things that came up while talking to friends and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's my story. And we didn't even get into Torchwood, so.
Jeez.
Let's not get into Torchwood ever.
3 hours later.
But John Perlman.
I mean, I'd sooner rather get into the Sarah Jane adventures.
Wow. And on that note, you're welcome, of course, to stick around for our entertainment section, as it is a cross section of your interests. If you have to depart, I will understand and not take it personally. So either way.
I'm East Coast. It's almost 1 a.m. here.
Yeah. Yeah, you have your.
Like I said, if you bounce, if you bounce, I won't take it personally. But we're going to be doing entertainment. We're going to be talking about the industry. So
Well,
You're welcome to listen in at the very least.
all right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
have a good
absolutely.
night.
Have a good one.
Have a good night.
All right, now that was your Wylde, and now we're going to get into the entertainment news. So,
Okay.
Adam, unleash the fury.
Well, first up is some very late breaking news in that it was just announced about an hour ago.
Oh.
But Gearbox Entertainment is being sold to Take-Two Entertainment.
Oh boy.
Yeah. For
No shit.
about $460 million.
Yeah, Embracer Group is divesting Gearbox Entertainment for a consideration of US dollars $460 million to Take-Two Interactive Software Incorporated.
Wow.
Yep.
That honestly
the-
feels kind of cheap.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so it was reported a few years ago that the Embracer Group bought Gearbox for a record $1.3 billion. That was not exactly true. It was that wasn't the purchase price. That was going to be like the complete package. A lot of that was tied into milestones and earnouts over a period of 5 to 6 years. And we don't exactly know what's going to happen in regards to those payouts. One could assume that Take-Two is going to assume those liabilities. But
because a contract is still a contract no matter who owns you.
Right, unless it's not a contract.
Valid.
Remember business. I'm like, so it's not, it's not, it's not on the level of, oh no, they're losing $500 million or whatever. It's like, on balance, they may have actually made a profit. I'm trying to remember the exact amount they actually shelled out for a few years ago. But I suppose that's less important than what's going on here. I'm like, given that everyone expected Take-Two to get Gearbox, for years now. Like, even before the Embracer buyout, everyone just assumed that, considering how closely the two entities worked on Borderlands, Take-Two has been publishing Borderlands since the beginning. And also, this comes right off the heels, and we talked about this on Fragments last week, of Embracer's divestment of Saber Interactive for about $500 million in total. Or no, it's $250 million now, and it's $250 if they buy the other two companies. But it means that Embracer is making itself slightly smaller. Like, even though that they've sold off two operative groups, they still got a lot of stuff under their umbrella, including Asmodee, Dark Horse, and the Lord of the Rings franchise. Like, this is a weird conglomerate.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, shifting on to, news that I think everyone's a lot more happy about, in it, in that, how do I explain it? Joe Lieberman is now dead. Like,
That was a hell of a lead in.
I
Oh my
mean,
God.
the
look,
sentiment is valid.
The politician, or
yes.
Yeah.
Like, look, there was no easy way to
What other
get
Joe
into
Lieberman
that.
is there? What other Joe Lieberman is there that you know?
he hasn't been relevant for long enough that I couldn't remember if that was him or if it was someone else.
No, but he was relevant long enough for pretty much everyone I've seen online to be grave dancing. And I know it might be a bit unusual to be mentioning here in the entertainment space until I mention one of the most famous things that he did in his time in office. And that is, he was one of the senators who jump-started the violence in gaming debate in late 1993, I think.
Which spawned, of course, the video game ratings for the ESRB.
Yep. That was a direct result of those hearings. So that very much falls into this sphere. That was
To put it in context. The ESRB could actually be likened to the Comics Code Authority, which was brought about by Think of the Children and also the Red Menace.
more or less. It was a bit different in the early 90s because there wasn't a Red Menace anymore, but it was still Think of the Children.
No, but I'm saying as far as Trump reasons for doing something.
It's also very much a we'll regulate ourselves so under the threat of if we don't, the government will. And
I mean, that was the direct.
Right.
No, that was the directive. That was the conclusion of those hearings. The Congress people said either you regulate yourselves or we will.
And someone had the good goddamn sense to pull a fairly serious action to keep the government from regulating something it would be terrible at regulating.
Video games did need a little more nuance. So the ESRB, I think, ultimately settled on a pretty good rating system, but they did model it slightly after the MPAA. At least in terms of governance.
Yeah. So, once again, it was one of the most consequential governmental interventions into the video game sphere ever. Maybe the most consequential. Mind you, other rating boards, have sprung up. The USK, the Zero board,
Zero is non-US based, so
yeah, none of these are. USK is German.
Peggy
Peggy is EU. My point is, this was just a bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Because
many of them were spawned because the ESRB was created.
Yeah. Or they arrived at the same moral panic. Think of the children. They just,
the pearl clutching, the crocodile tears, the whole 9 yards, yes.
It's I'm not sure if they had governmental bodies doing the same things, but if they did, they certainly didn't have the televised hearings that we did. Though, ultimately, the creation of the ESRB is a significant milestone in video gaming. It's not a positive or a negative. It just is. Because, nobody, how do I put this? The ESRB hasn't ended up like the MPAA.
It doesn't really have any teeth.
I wouldn't go that far. It does have some teeth in the sense that if your game gets rated AO, you will not be put on consoles.
Fair.
There's still that kind of blockage in there, but it's less prevalent.
With the exception of this 1995 Sega classic Sacred Pools, but
yeah, or some 3DO stuff and the joy of sex for the CDI. I am not joking about that.
I believe it. Let's watch it in high quality stop motion animation on FMV.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But, you know, it's not. It's not. It's not as. I'm trying to think of the right word here. As powerful as the MPAA is over film rating, at least from what I've seen. Because, you know, like, nobody's made a documentary about the ESRB. Like, it barely gets brought up. As opposed to the MPAA, where, yeah, a lot of stuff and noise has been made about it. You know, like, if you want more
I can't help but wonder if that's...
Yeah, go see This Film Has Not Been Rated. Excellent documentary, though it is from a while ago. So, I
can't help but wonder if it's like... I can't help but wonder if it's like a legacy prestige thing, because motion picture is a quote-unquote more respected art form than video games still to this day. I mean, video games are quite cinematic now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have a lot of... They share a lot of screenwriters now with who now have WGA membership and so on and so forth. So it's entirely possible that someday the line will blur to the point of non-existence. But I can't help but wonder if, at least on some level, it's a legacy prestige thing that the ESRB, or they don't need to.
I'm like,
because the industry's been playing ball so nicely.
I don't know. I honestly don't.
Yeah.
But this makes for a good segue into the next news item, and that is the credit card payment processors are at it again.
Oh boy.
Oh dear. Yes.
I'm like, Mac, you probably will relate most to this because it's more of because they've come down on the site Gumroad recently.
And Patreon.
Yep. Like
so much so that the ACLU is actually threatening to attack MasterCard for their policies regarding sex work. But I will let you go ahead and make your point. Sorry.
But yeah, I know it hit Gumroad harder because pretty much like anyone who is selling stuff on that site isn't doing that anymore. As opposed to Patreon, yep. I think you have to have some sort of verification on that.
So what Patreon is requiring is a obvious sense of consent that any explicit act depicted artistically or otherwise must be obviously consensual, in addition to any of the other aspects like verifying that the characters are in fact adults and so on and so forth. And a lot of people were really bent about this because like it's so vague. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, if you were skirting the edge, it's like, you know, the old saying, if you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. You knew what you were doing when you started being an edgelord. Furry fandom knows this quite intimately. And I had this same conversation with a similar conversation with Bernal back in 2010, 2011 when I was on the webcomic Beacon talking about payment processors. So that tells you how long I've personally been in this battle. And it all stems from faux morality and the 2003 addendum to USC 18 section 2254, which pertains to adult works, which is the euphemistic colloquialism for pornography. And the Protect Act is what they called it, was ostensibly designed to basically keep adult materials out of the hands of children And the payment processors took it to the nth degree, doing such weird things like prohibiting mythical creatures like elves and fairies and genies. Dwarves were not allowed to be shown. Dwarves in the D&D sense, in the J.R.R. Tolkien sense, were not allowed to be depicted essentially copulating. And it's just on and on and on. So, like I said, I'm not going to belabor that point because we've already covered that part many, many times. But yeah, it's really bizarre, and people are very much up in arms about this. And so far, the only one that hasn't been significantly impacted by all of this is Subscribestar.
Yeah.
But you look at other sex work related stuff where there's payment processors involved, like OnlyFans and Fansly and all that stuff. And I suspect that what you're going to see is there's going to be so much pushback on this that they're going to have no choice but to relent on this, because MasterCard tried this chicanery with OnlyFans, only to get roundly rebuked, and ended up finding some common ground to allow OnlyFans to continue to exist. Bankers and so on and so forth found some way to allow this to coexist. So it's going to be interesting then, for sure, especially if the ACLU gets involved and takes this all the way to the Supreme Court. Then we get to watch ACB and Brett Kavanaugh squirm for hours on end.
Joy.
While they talk about lurid details of furries and their multiple
I was
appendages.
about to say, bring out the furries, please. I want to see that man squirm to some of the weird furry shit. Or we awaken a kink live on air.
They did spend an exorbitant amount of time in his confirmation hearing talking about boofing. So, anyway, moving on. Adam, the floor is yours again.
I think that's about it, because it's hitting 1 o'clock, and you said you wanted to keep this 90 minutes.
That's true. That's true. I think we've done pretty good, and of course, Adam, if you'll follow up with our guests and make sure that they felt that all things were presented in an orderly fashion, I would greatly appreciate that. And that's it. What have we got going on next week? Because I don't have the document in front of me to do the announcements.
Next week is going to be a real interesting one, because we are welcoming back to the program Ross Scott of Accursed Farm. Yeah. So we had him on the broadcast 14 years ago.
Wow.
If you don't recall who he is the creator of Freeman's Mind and Ross's Game Dungeon.
Yeah, I know that. That's the name. Okay.
Yeah. But we're going to be talking about something really unique, in that he is funding or spearheading a class action lawsuit against Ubisoft for delisting the Crew. No, the Screw One. Yeah. There's been some updates on that and some snags, especially in regards to U.S. law, but apparently he will have, stuff to talk about in that regard next week.
Oh, okay.
Not sure. Yeah, so it's definitely a topic that's become much more and more hot button as games have more and more been delisted from digital storefronts or been made unplayable because live service games, especially.
Right.
So look for that next week.
All right. Man, I'm so tired.
Mood.
Well, I mean, I was also, like I said, digging up a hidden patio under my backyard, so it's sort of a manic response to not being able to do much else, including catching up on my games and probably getting thrown out of my guilds. Well, that's definitely something to look forward to, and we'll definitely catch up next week. And I'm trying to find the page. Here we go. Find the page. So again, thanks to Vera Wylde from Council of Geeks for appearing on the show, and I look forward to checking out more of that content. And I advise y'all to get out there and check it out as well. But that's it for this week's Moonhawk Studios Presents. Thank everybody for watching. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.